I think it makes it better. All right, it shows that we are live, Rebecca. I'll
Wonderful.
give people a few minutes to jump on here and realize that we are streaming so they can join us. So I always like to start by thanking the Livestock Conservancy for making this possible. Without their help on the technology, I don't know that I'd have pulled this off. There's a lot of things that are harder than saving these pigs, and that's one of them for me. So thank you to the Livestock Conservancy for that. Um, also want to introduce you, Rebecca, and myself. So you guys may or may not know me. I'm Laura Jensen. I took over the A.M.B.A from the founder, Rico Silvera, last year. Became the registrar in the spring, and then took over the whole operation in the fall. And from there, this is one of the new things that we offer so that we can stay in touch, get to know each other, and see what each of us are doing with the Meishan. That is a little unique, is what I find with every single person that we talk to. So today we've got Rebecca Thompson with us, and she is with Elemental Acres. Hi.
Hi.
And you are in, am I saying it right? Rainier, Oregon?
Well, it rains here enough that we joke that it should be pronounced rainier, but Rainier, like the mountain in Washington State, although we are on the Oregon side of the river.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
And actually, we're in a tiny little community just outside of town up in the hills that everybody refers to as Gobel, although most people not from the area pronounce it as Gobble, which is also.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, so Rainier, Oregon.
Okay. All right. And you are a veteran, or you're still active service, I guess, technically. So thank you for your service.
Thank you. Just over 21, almost 22 years. It'll be 22 years the end of January. Oregon Air National Guard, so the Air Force branch of the National Guard. And I'm an F-15 crew chief, which always gets me a lot of questions from people.
Yeah.
But I spent the first 14 years in what's called the inspection section of maintenance, so tearing jets apart, inspecting them, putting them back together. But I've also spent a lot of time on the flight line. And then I worked in Maintenance Operation Control Center and now in Quality Assurance. But I am hoping to retire in January.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were pretty badass already, but now that just pushes it over the top. So, all right. Well, so what we try to do is keep this to roughly within an hour. I know we get to talking and we have lots of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in with the questions. And then if you guys have any, you can just comment on the Facebook link and it'll show up in our feed where we can see it, and we'll stop and ask the question so we can get everybody covered there. So let's jump in. Tell us why Meishan.
So I had previously had some American guinea hogs. This was probably a decade ago now. Just a couple of them, and just thought they were great. And that was the direction I was leaning when my husband and I bought our current property just 3 years ago now. And he was not excited about the AGH. He didn't think that they would get big enough. He didn't think that they would grow fast enough. And he just didn't see it as something that was both interesting enough and also had the potential profitability to make it worth the effort. And so I was scrolling through some heritage pig forums on Facebook, and I stumbled across a post from Wendy Palmer at Imperial Meishans.
Go Wendy.
And I don't remember which group it was or which forum it was on, but I remember there being a video that I was just absolutely floored by. Oh my gosh, look at this pig. This was something unlike anything I'd seen before. The big floppy ears, the wrinkled up faces. So, initially what got my attention, of course, is just their appearance, right? They are unlike anything anybody expects. And I always tell people that if they had a snout, they would be the epitome of the live image of Dumbo from, the Disney movies. And they're just adorable. And then I started researching, I started reading about them, and I found out, about how they wound up in the United States. And that was really interesting. And then I stumbled upon the A.M.B.A and Rico's story about just trying to save as many of them from the research herds as possible to ensure that we had enough genetic diversity that as a community, right, that's what we are now, can come together and ensure that these animals can continue to exist, right? That we can preserve them for prosperity, for longevity, and just honestly reading about how unique they are and how rare they are. Spent a lot of time on the Livestock Conservancy page, which I do for most of my animals, because my focus from day one I want everything we focus on the farm to be heritage. I want it to be just like the Meishan, animals that are unique and special and deserve to continue to exist. And as we all know, especially when it comes to livestock, if it doesn't have a purpose, then it is not going to...
You see that too?
Yes. Elephant and Eeyore, perfect.
Yes.
But if they don't have a purpose, then they're not going to continue, right? Because not everybody wants to have a 400-pound pig as a pet.
Absolutely.
Although, surprisingly enough, 2 of the barrows that we sold from our last litters were in fact specifically for a small farm that was creating a petting zoo. And they wanted friendly, adorable, interesting pigs that were going to be special enough that people were going to want to come check them out, and docile and gentle enough that kids could just sit on the ground and pet them. And so I think that the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, for us was when I read that the Livestock Conservancy was estimating only 2,000 breeding age Meishans left in the world. And that just sort of was like, whoa, took my breath away. Because if these were in the wild, they would actually be an endangered species, right?
And especially as slow as they are.
Right. And so I just felt like this is something that I want to be a part of. When I was activated right after 9/11, early in my career, and I was asked by a journalist one day, why are you here? And I told her, well, because I want to be a part of something that's bigger than myself. And that most people who know me well will tell you is the very core of who I am as a person. I just want to be involved with things that I feel are making a difference, whether that difference is something very small and local, or whether it's something that is on a bigger, grander scale. And I feel like the Meishan is that. They're just amazing animals. And then once we got them, well, forget about it. It's no holds barred. It's
over. Yeah. So those of you that can't see what we're giggling about, Tara, which I think you're in Canada, aren't you, Tara? Had typed in that Meishans are equal to elephant crossed with Eeyore, which made us laugh. And then Pork Ryan's out there. Hey, Ryan. He gave us a couple laughing faces there, so that made us giggle. So thank y'all for piping up. Please continue to comment as we go. So Rebecca, how do you raise your Meishans as far as pasture, barn? What's your setup look like?
So everything we do with the Meishans is on pasture. They do have shelter in both of the areas that we currently have pigs in, but none of them are ever confined to a building. One of the things we wanted were, in fact, animals that were going to do well on rotational pasturing. The property that we bought was very neglected for a number of years before we got here. And so we've been doing a lot to recover areas of the land from brush and blackberries and Scotch broom. And I really feel strongly that the pigs are incredibly beneficial for that. So our first area is about and I think I'm kind of jumping ahead because 2 questions later, you're going to ask me about how big or small they are, but I'm just going to go ahead. Okay. We have 2 separate areas currently. The first area is the one that we started out with, and we basically fenced in an area off of a 3-sided shelter that already existed. It's your typical tall 3-sided metal pole barn that's only 3-sided, that was built for horses because the previous owners were horse people. So it's really tall, but it already had a wall in the middle, and each side is about the size of a horse stall. So that's what we turned into our farrowing areas. And it also means that when I bring somebody new to the property, like Maui, our little boar that we got from Weaver Meadow Farms in Lebanon, Oregon, a couple months ago, I'm able to isolate and separate them, for a week, check them out, make sure they're all's good, make sure that they get a chance to calm down and get to know me really well in a smaller area. But they also smell and hear their future herd mates. And so it's a great way to slowly bring them together. And we've found that that's worked out really well. The pasture area off of that is about 1.5 acres. The top half acre is moving up towards the hillside of our property. So it's young Doug fir forest with multiple other softwoods. We've got red alders, and I know there's some hazelnuts growing in there, and maples and vine maples, and just a plethora mix of your typical, Oregon forest, really. And it was extremely overgrown with blackberries and Scotch broom, which are both very invasive in our area. And we also happen to have 2 goats in that area, which I know is another question down the road. But so our first 4 pigs and our 2 goats got to know each other and have lived and cohabitated in this 1.5 acres incredibly well. And they free range and roam throughout there. In that particular one, we don't rotate, but that's where our main breeders are. So the pigs and the goats have done a fantastic job of tearing up the blackberry and destroying the Scotch broom. And so we've loved how that's worked out. The goats tend to eat the green stuff down, and the pigs tend to tear them up by their roots. And I swear, if you walk in and you have to dunk down underneath these young Doug firs, it is just clean underneath.
Oh, it sounds nice and cool.
That's worked out great. And that's what they do. They go up there in the afternoons, and they love to lay in the cooler shaded area up there. But they're really, I feel like, based on conversations with other people, that our pigs are pretty active. When they get up in the morning, they're always waiting for me to feed them. We only feed once a day, and then they forage and graze pretty much in that entire area. Okay. The second area is about a 1 acre parcel that we divide into 1/4 acre plots using hot net fence or hot rope. And we rotate 10 young gilts that are just about 6 months old through that area on a regular rotating basis.
All right, fantastic. We had a couple more comments. Tara, you're our first Canadian out of the country person. So thank you for joining us today. Woohoo! And she also commented that with the production and litter rates and their hardiness, that they should not be endangered, and that they're so fascinating. And I think obviously we all agree with that. So, okay. So we touched on what, as far as how you raise them. How many Meishans do you have, and do you have any other breeds of pigs on your farm?
We do not have any other breeds of pigs. We've kind of decided that with each type of animal that we raise, that we really want to pick a focus point. So with the pigs, we're completely focused on and dedicated to pure Meishan. The same with our turkeys. We raise heritage Narragansett turkeys. And our main chicken focus is the Delaware, which is another heritage bird. So again, Livestock Conservancy, thank you for helping me with my research that I can find things that are worth focusing on in that regard. We have a total of 14 Meishans currently, two sows. There are 2 mama pigs that gave us our litters last February. I got them from Cheryl Eaglewoman, who was in Montana, but is now in northeastern Washington. And she was absolutely fantastic to work with. We drove up to Montana in January, which my husband thought I was insane for. But Cheryl was in the middle of moving, and we got a great deal by picking up these 1-year-old gilts from her, and so that she didn't have to deal with moving them. So that's Mei Feng, which I call Mei Mei. She is sort of the mama hen of them all. She's kind of the boss, but she's super incredibly personable. So she's always the first one. She usually is sitting by the gate waiting for me with a big smile on her face. And then Ayla is her sister. So we've got the 2, they are actually full sisters, which it has presented some challenges in terms of trying to create pairs for people, but we're expanding and we're moving along. And then we got Kai, our 1-year-old boar. He just turned a year old this week.
Oh, yeah.
So the 2 sows are almost 2.5 now. Kai just turned 1, and we got him from Billy Gaines, which is also in northeastern Washington State. Believe it or not, when I first got going, Cheryl was literally the only person west of, I think, the Mississippi River. There was literally nobody on the West Coast that was doing anything with Meishan anywhere involved in the A.M.B.A that I could find. And so it's super, super exciting for me that as of today, as far as I know, there are 4 certified breeders in Oregon, 2 in Oregon and 2 in Washington. And we hopefully will soon have another in Oregon.
Right.
That's very exciting for me.
Yeah,
it's nice
you've got a very strong group out there. Just seeing it form, I feel like that what I see in Georgia and what I see in your area are very similar. So I think that you guys, and especially with all that you bring to the table, you guys are going to be a force out there for the Meishan.
I'm super excited. I'm really, really excited about what we can do to ensure that people have enough diversity within their local region to be able to continue to expand and grow the Meishan out here without making it any more difficult than it needs to be. Because I know I would say that if there had been more people out here 2 years ago when we got started, we'd be a lot further along than we are now.
Yes.
So our first 2 litters happened they were born the 5th and the 17th of February this last year. And then and that was from Kai and the 2 sows that we got from Cheryl. And so from them, we had a total of 24 babies. It does happen fast. May had 14 and Ayla had 10. And it was just pig city out here. And just, I think I was driving people nuts probably with all the pig whip videos and pictures and stuff on social media. And from those, we have kept 10 of the gilts. 2 of them we plan to keep and breed with our new boar, Maui, who we got from Megan Weaver. Was from one of the litters that came from a sow she got from Jonathan at Oddbird Farm. So Maui's a little boy from Oddbird, and he is absolutely adorable and incredible. Again, same, just wonderful, friendly, please pet me all the time personality. So we're excited for what the future holds. And as soon as Kai was able to get back with his girls, they were bred again. So we have 2 litters due August 2nd and 4th, and it'll be.
That's good. He's got one job. That's what I always tell people about boars. They're very serious about it. They have one job.
And I have to say, now, like I said, I've only ever had pigs that were smaller. And I've heard people talk before about being afraid of a big boar.
Correct.
And, Kai's only a year old, so I'm sure everybody else knows he's nowhere near fully grown, right? He's still filling out. But what was very interesting to me was how simple and easy, like we had a net fence, electric net fence separating 2 areas of that 1.5 acre parcel. And we basically just turned the fence off and opened it up because the girls were just standing there staring at him through it. And of course, standing heat, so they're in a trance, they're not moving. He walks right over, gets the job done. And when he was done, he literally just walked right back over to his side and we put the fence back up.
That's funny.
I mean, I just really couldn't, and maybe I've just been really, really lucky, but they're just, to me, they're the simplest. It's been a wonderful learning experience, and I am very, very much new to this and still very much learning, but so far they've just been the easiest thing in the world to work with.
Fantastic. Tara commented again that she almost had some of Cheryl's stock too, that she was actually working to import them in the summer of 2019. And I think that move was one of those things that kind of got in the way there, it sounds like. So I'm
Yeah,
super excited to talk to Tara. We actually met on a page the other day, and it's just so neat to see interest in Canada. And I don't know, I
absolutely.
just think it builds great momentum with what we have here. So, Rebecca, what kind of fencing do you use? I know you said you've got this electric fencing. Is that all that you use to keep them in, or what else do you have?
Pretty much. The 1.5 acre parcel is mostly 6-strand hot wire. And I know everybody's probably going, 6 strands? What in the world do you need 6 strands for? Remember, we have 2 goats in there. And
Yeah.
the whole reason that there are 6 strands, I think we started out with 4 and we kept having to add more because Donnie, our little Nigerian dwarf, he's a bit of a butthead. And he's super sweet. He's super sweet and he's very friendly. But he is one of those animals that is going to go through a fence and stand there and look at you and be like, hey, told you, or I showed you. When we had the net fence set up, he would jump over it and stand there and look at me. And when I'd start to walk up towards him, he'd jump right back. You know, so, but the 6-strand hot wire is also because we do have both bear and cougar in our area. And our first, the owners that we bought the property from, actually had trail cam footage of both black bear and cougar that crossed the top of our hillside. So in addition to keeping animals in, we've continued when we've built fence around the other acre parcel where the gilts are to use at least 5-strand hot wire. And each strand, it's at 7,000 volts. And that is as much to keep coyotes, bear, cougar, and whatnot out of the pigs. So it's as much to protect them as to keep them in. I have learned that with the pigs, it is as simple as a couple of strands at about 1 foot and 3 foot of hot wire or hot rope. And that's really all it takes to keep them into a smaller area. So on the 1 acre parcel where we rotate, it's 4-strand hot wire around the perimeter. But when I split up the 1/4 acre parcels, I just run a couple of strands of hot rope from one side of the fence to the other. And it's super easy. They respond really, really well to electricity.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I've heard that. So that's good, and it gives you a lot of flexibility too to work with. So moving on to our fifth question here. What do you feed them? What's your feed program look like for them? You said you fed once a day, but what kind of feed do you use, if any?
So we use feed that is made by another local farm here in Oregon called Mosaic Farms. They're outside of Corvallis, Oregon, so in the central Willamette Valley kind of area. I think Philomath is the actual town that they're in, but it's just outside of Corvallis. And they do a hog grower that is milled fresh and bagged basically the day we show up to pick it up. Wow. I do get it in 50-pound bags rather than in bulk because we also offer it for sale from the farm.
Oh, nice.
So we get a 50-pound bag for around $16. And it is a complete, he does a fantastic job of creating a very nutritionally complete feed for the pigs. I printed off the information because I figured people might have questions for me. So we're looking at about 15.5% crude protein minimum and a crude fiber maximum of 5%. And it's all locally sourced products and ingredients, which was really important to me. Mm-hmm. So the ingredients list is literally Oregon white wheat, which they get from a farm that grows it using organic practices right here in Oregon. It's peas that they get from a farm grown with organic practices in Washington State. Camelina meal, rice bran pellets, and then a Fertril Nutri-Balancer, which is a vitamin mineral supplement. L-lysine, which is an amino acid that is really important for the formation of collagen and bones, connective tissues, tendons, and cartilage. And then I'm not going to say it right, methionine, which is also an essential amino acid, which is really important for healthy skin and strong nails. Mm-hmm. I would say that if we've had any issues at all that have required any kind of intervention in any way, shape, or form, it has been with the feet. And I think a big part of that is that normally in a normal season, weather season for us, we get a lot of rain from October till May or June easily. This has been an extremely odd year for us, and I'm sure people who watch the news much have seen the heat wave that has been just ravaging the West Coast. But the Pacific Northwest at the end of June got hit very, very hard. We very rarely ever see 100 degrees here. And usually that happens maybe once or twice in August. But we had a solid 3 days of 105 to 111 degrees.
Well, that's tough.
Into June. We were seeing 80 degrees as early as April this year. So Kai, our older boar, had some splitting and cracking in his back hooves that I think was a combination of just really wet, soggy winter rains and snow. And then things getting really, really hot and dry really, really fast. They weren't cracking so I would love to get everybody's input on this, because they weren't cracking at the tip of the nail, but they were splitting in the middle. I got some hoof conditioner, and we just painted that on a few times, and he's doing fine. But that would be the one thing that I'd say that we do have to be aware of, because of how wet it normally is around here. We really do have to pay close attention to their feet, and they don't like to let you trim their nails. So
right, yeah, that would be a challenge.
They don't like to let you trim their nails. And so I was actually joking around with a gal in the area that helped me with castration for our barrows from these last 2 litters, and told her that, I was really tempted when they were in labor to just cut their nails then. And she goes, I've done that before.
Yeah, totally.
May end up doing that in August.
Yeah. A couple questions came in, or comments too. Ron says goats are the worst, best animal, and I would totally agree. If there's ever a fence tester, it's a goat. And he also has a great question that with all the wildfires that you've seen in the Pacific Northwest, do you have an emergency to plan for natural disasters like that?
Oh man, that's an outstanding point. I actually, one of the things that I've been very involved with for the last 5 years with the Air National Guard has been with what we call O-Plan Smoky, or Operational Plan Smoky, where the National Guard is activated, both Air and Army units are activated to help with wildland firefighting. And so luckily I have a very great resource and access to a lot of inside information, and keep my fingers very much on the pulse of where fires are at and what's going on with them. So I do watch that very, very closely. We in our area we just don't get as dry as the rest of the state. And I say that crossing my fingers, of course. Yeah. Both my husband and I have experience with wildland firefighting, and we're fortunate that we've got some good equipment in the area and good neighbors. So if there were to be something that were to break out in our area, we do have good plans in place for, protecting our home sites, and literally tractors and cats, and the ability to put in fire lines around, wow, the properties that are, so we're 27 acres. The property immediately next to us is 28. And the one after that's 800 to 1,000. Mm-hmm. And us three owners are actually quite close. And so we do have heavy equipment where we could literally put in bulldozer lines around the 3 properties and really give ourselves a nice cushion. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that we would never have to evacuate, and that would definitely pose a bigger challenge. But we have friends with trailers. That is not something that we have gotten yet. Yeah. My husband literally built a box for the back of his pickup truck that when we went and picked up the gilts in Montana. Mm-hmm. So we can move a few animals at a time very easily. But if we needed to move a lot of animals in a trailer in a hurry, we would definitely be making some phone calls and calling in some favors.
But with your experience, the fire lines, I think, would be a huge benefit too. And it sounds like you would pull together for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, Tara made a comment. Let's see here. She said she would love to exchange feed information. She said, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. I've also done mineral trace testing on harvested livers, which is a really
Ooh,
cool
that's very
subject. I'd like to
interesting.
talk about that one day.
Absolutely.
Our recent test was only short on manganese, so that's really interesting. So, what I would say on that, Tara, is back to the Facebook page. All these comments will show up, so you guys could definitely connect there in terms of sharing information. And then, if you would, I'd love to hear too. It's really exciting, I think, to do these mineral trace testings and learn more from that. So,
That is
wow.
good.
Great questions today. Just to keep it moving, because I know everybody is super busy. So we talked about the feed. Next up is grow out times. What are you finding? Are you hanging weights, and how long are you running them? That sort of thing.
So, as I mentioned, we just had our first 2 litters last February. We started with our first 2 Meishans, were a couple of barrows that we found from somebody on Craigslist. And we got them in October of 2019. And so we grew them out and hand processed them ourselves, doing the old fashioned scald and scrape and everything by hand here at home last summer. The first one we did in August, and the second one we did in October. I was deployed last spring for 3.5 months, and my husband got a little overzealous with the feed. And I came home to 2 massively overweight barrows, and we actually had to put them on a diet before we harvested them. So I don't feel like they gave us a very good judge in terms of what to expect from the ones we're raising now. But they were both over 300 pounds, and it was right around a year old. We're hoping to get to right between 280 to 300 pounds with the current gilts that we're growing out. All of our males got sold. So the ones that we're growing out this year are actually gilts, and we have process dates for the very end of October. I think it's the 27th or something like that. And our processor, our USDA processor that we'll be working with, is called Carlton Farms. They're actually really, really well known on the West Coast. And from my old stomping grounds in wine country, which we didn't even get into. I'll mention that later.
We'll get there, definitely.
But they actually have a live weight maximum of 300 pounds.
That's interesting.
Yeah, apparently it's very unusual. Finding USDA processing in our area is extremely difficult. And I'm one of those people who really, really hates the stress that moving the animals puts on them. And it just drives me nuts that the cost of creating a mobile USDA slaughtering system is so outrageous that it's just has never been sustainable for anybody that's really tried to do it. Yeah. It's something we've talked about a lot. We've talked with a lot of potential investors and interested parties about how we could make it work, because I really feel like, especially in our area, that it would be, their demand would be there, but it also takes a long time to get places. We're really pretty spread out. So Carlton Farms is about a 2-hour drive from us, and that's in a regular car. And that's literally the closest ones. So maybe being smaller and younger will make it a little bit easier on the animals as well. But that's the biggest, if I have any nerves about processing, that's my biggest one, is how hard is it going to be to load them? How stressful is the ride going to be? And what condition are they going to be in when they get there? But we're shooting for that 280 to 300 pounds at about 9 months.
Now, that's live weight, correct? That's not.
That is live weight. That's live weight. So,
all right. Cindy Conan asked a question. Hello, Cindy. She wants to know, how much grain do you feed per pig per day?
That's a great question. We have found that for the most part, our pigs do really well at 3 pounds per pig dry weight per day. And I should mention that we feed wet. We actually do a short fermentation on the feed. So every morning after I feed everybody, including all the birds and everything, I mix up the 3 pound per pig into buckets, not into a bucket per pig, but we mix it up so that a bucket goes to a group of animals, and we just split it up. But we do 3 pounds per pig mixed in with hot water. And we're doing, let's see, it's about 1.5 times the dry weight of water. So to make it easy, for 10 pounds of dry weight, it would be 15 pounds of water. Mm-hmm. We mix it up using a cement mixer because that makes it easy.
Yeah.
And then it basically just sits covered in my brooder room where it's a nice, steady, even temperature until the next morning. And then, so it's like a thick oatmeal consistency when we feed it the next morning. The pigs love it. I will say that, maybe it's just that the Meishans have an incredible digestive system, but we don't ever see undigested feed in their waste, and it doesn't smell. Doesn't stink. I really feel like the fermentation and the soaking helps stuff to start breaking down, especially with the enzymes that Chris is putting in the feed. And they just seem to absorb everything very well. I think they're very efficient at that. I think the fact that they are able to grow so much off of the forage that they find for themselves is also a real testament to the Meishan as a pig. But we don't see any feed waste whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. I bet not. It sounds like a phenomenal feed. I'm a little jealous of that. I don't have anything like that in my area. And Tara says that she does a similar soak. I think y'all are supposed to be friends. I'm just, I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving along here. I think we kind of touched on the next question, and that's pasturing pigs with other animals. It sounds like you run them with goats. Is that pretty much kind of the setup?
Yep. The goats live with the older pigs, and they did fine with the babies and stuff too. Last winter, when I separated Kai from the mamas just before we thought they were due, we ran up that net fence. When we separated him, the thing a pig, I believe, fears the most is separation. They really do not like to be removed from their herd. And so, and I tell people all the time when they contact me about buying a piglet that, you don't want to have just one pig. That's when you're going to have fence problems. That's when you're going to have destruction problems. They don't do well solo. They really need to have friends. Mm-hmm. And so the goats were absolutely fantastic buddies with Kai. And so Mike built a little wooden shelter, and they spent the winter together, the 2 goats, the 1 boar. And if you check out my Instagram, it's Elemental Acres. It's same thing on Facebook, but I mostly post everything on Instagram, and it feeds over there. But I have lots and lots of pictures from the winter of Kai and the goats together, snuggled up. They slept together most of the time. They rest together. They played together. I never could catch it on video, but I had multiple hilarious days of watching Kai and Donnie chase each other around. So I really truly believe that goats are fantastic companion animals for Meishans.
Yeah,
not for all pigs, but definitely for the Meishans.
All right. So the next one I think I want to come back to, and it's on pork flavor and tenderness, and that's because you have so much knowledge from your wine days when you were a winemaker, that I think I'd like to get some of these more pig farm questions out of the way first, if that's okay. So you talked about farrowing, which those of you that are new to the pigs, farrowing is when they give birth or have babies. And I'd like to hear about your farrowing areas. Was it a specific setup, or what did you do there?
So I mentioned earlier that we started out with this metal 3-sided shelter that had a wooden wall down the middle. And basically we put up gates at the front of them, and then bumper boards and what I call a crib area to the side. So at the very back wall, we ran a bumper board that goes across the whole way, and it's about 2 feet from the back wall and has a good 6 to 10 inch gap. I say that as a variant because, as we know, they like to push their bedding around. And so the gap underneath tends to change a little bit. And that was something I did see that I needed to keep an eye on to make sure there was enough of a gap for the piglets to get underneath of it, to get out of mama's way. Mm-hmm. On the side wall that is the exterior metal wall, not the interior wall that separates them, on the exterior wall on both sides, we built a wider crib-like area. So it's a bigger, wider space. It meant that it gave me an area where I could put supplemental milk replacer or crate feed inside of that area that the piglets can access it, but mama can't. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of a combination area. So they have two directions that the piglets can go to get out of mama's way. And I did, as I mentioned to Laura before, I did learn a little bit of a hard lesson with that because one, Meishans don't see really well, right?
Right.
Their faces are, at least with our girls, their faces are so wrinkled up half the time. I don't even know if they can see much at all. But they have incredible ears. Like they recognize sounds. Mm-hmm. So I talk to them all the time. Every time I walk out there, I say their names and I talk to them, and they know my voice and they know my scent. And so they don't startle as easily. But I tell people that come out to visit all the time that they need to get low so that they can be seen, and they need to talk and make sure that they keep their voices calm, especially when kids are around, because they definitely react to sounds they don't recognize differently. Mm-hmm. So we've got those creep areas, but the first one that farrowed in the area that I hadn't finished setting up yet, and May piled up this massive haystack. She took all the hay from both sides and put it into one massive pile in this corner, and just wanted to be all the way up against that corner as much as possible. And it was her first litter too. So, I think there was, the normal anxieties that we would all expect. But we did lose one each of the first 2 nights after she farrowed because there wasn't that bumper board at the back. Mm-hmm. So if you have the ability to create 2 safety zones, I strongly feel that you will not regret it. That you will be very glad that you have that if you have the ability to create that, because I think it makes a big difference in the survivability of your piglets. And what else? There was something else I was going to say. Oh, and as tempting as it is to give them as much bedding as they want, make sure they have some hay. But if you give them too much, then piglets are going to get lost in the hay. It makes it harder for you to see them, makes it even harder for mama to know where they are, makes it harder for them to get away. So as tempting as it is to give them the ability to build a big nest, be cautious about the amount of nesting you give them, because the more they
Yeah, we had a couple comments when you were talking about Maui and the goats and the interactions and such there, where Ryan was saying to preach it as far as your thoughts on the pigs and the temperaments and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then Tara said that she's nodding along. She also made a comment that her pig would stand and blow out her nose, and she'd be like, "It's just me," and they would lay back down. Yeah. And that their nesting is insane, and I think we've probably all seen that. That's what I tell mine. It's just me. It's all good.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I found that it was an absolutely magical experience being with them both through their first farrowings. It was extremely stressful for me.
Yes.
I was absolutely terrified of anything going wrong. And I'm not going to go into the long stories and details. I told Laura the story, but we almost lost one of them. It was very, very scary. And she's doing fine now, and that's what matters. But the sounds that they make are very interesting, because I tell people all the time that they talk to me. Is they just seem to have this entire vocabulary of sounds. And it was just amazing to me listening to the differences in the sounds that they made to let the babies know when they needed to get out of the way, or when they needed to come back, or when they needed to move, or when they needed to come eat. Mm-hmm. I was telling you, the first one farrowed. May farrowed 2 weeks before Ayla farrowed. And we struggled a lot with Ayla during her farrowing, because May would call her babies to come eat, and that specific rhythmic grunting that they make would cause Ayla to start dripping and spraying milk, and her contractions would stop, because she would lay down and roll up like she was calling her own babies to come eat. Wow. And she would start repeating that noise.
That's strong.
So their language capabilities are just phenomenal and mind-boggling to me.
Yep. Yep. When do you wean your piglets? At what age do you wean?
So last time we we had a lot going on in April, and we kind of just let it get away from us a little bit. I was telling you yesterday that I thought it was 8 weeks, and then I actually did the math this morning, and it was 12.
Yeah, it happens.
And that made it a lot harder because they were so much bigger. It made it a lot harder to actually get them away from mama.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the only time that they haven't responded to the electric fence, because the first time I moved them, they ran straight through the fence on their side and straight through the fence to the mom's side to get back to mom's. I ended up having to move them 3 times. And then the third time I put up a electric net fence just around their shelter to keep them there until they settled in and realized that that was their new home, because they just, and that took probably 3 weeks. I left that up before I took it down. And then it was just no problem after that. They settled in, they realized that they were on their own new little herd. But we're shooting for 4 to 6 weeks moving forward. I think that it'll be a lot easier to move them when they're smaller. And you had mentioned to me yesterday that you've actually seen better hanging weights by weaning a little bit earlier rather than later. But we do provide treat feed starting at a week. And I actually, rather than mixing the feed, it's the same feed that we feed the parents, but instead of mixing the feed with water, I actually mix it with milk replacer.
That's a good idea.
To give them, that little bit more. And I really feel like we had some fast growers in these litters. I have at least 2 of those gilts that were born in February that are as big, if not bigger, than Maui, the boar we got that was born in December.
That's fantastic.
So I'm really excited to see how that all plays out.
Yeah. Yeah. Our last pig question, and then I want to talk about all these other really cool things. And that is rooting with the Meishan. How would you describe it? And what do you see with rooting with your herd?
I really feel like, based on the experience I have with the AGH, which is the only other personal experience I've had with pigs, that it was significantly milder. I find that for the most part, it seems like the pigs prefer to just munch down the grass. They do like the roots sometimes, and I know they'll go after bugs and worms. I've witnessed that, but it seems like when they do turn the soil much, it's usually just the first couple of inches. And in the areas where we have them, we really want them to do that. And so we actually see that as a benefit more than a detraction. Although I will mention that if an area is particularly wet, then I have seen them dig quite a bit deeper. And it's clearly because they're looking for that place to wallow in some mud. And so I've really gone out of our way this year to make sure we create a very specific area that is always wet and muddy with plenty of water in it, that is a specific place that they know that they can go to do that. And then we see a lot less of that digging. Because we can get quite muddy from the rain sometimes in the wintertime, there's always going to be something that gets their attention and that they decide to go after. But for the most part, I feel like they're really quite mild in terms of their effect on a pasture area. Okay.
All right. Well, then let's get into some of these other things. And the question is pork flavor and tenderness. But what I'd like to share with everybody, especially all the new folks that have joined us, Rebecca is amazing in all the skills that she has. So not only has she been around the F-15 fighter jets and is a conservationist on her farm, but she's a winemaker and has an extensive knowledge of pairing wines with other foods. And as we were kind of reviewing this last night, I was blown away at your knowledge and how you see the Meishan in terms of your wine business. And this is where it kind of comes into your perspective on the pork and the flavor and the tenderness of the Meishan. So I turn it over to you.
Thanks. In the mid 2000s, I opened a wine shop in McMinnville down in the heart of Oregon's Willamette Valley wine country, where Pinot is king. And I worked on the sales side of wine for several years, and then actually started dating a winemaker who I was asked to help with harvest one year. And he said at the end of harvest that I should be making wine instead of selling wine. And I told him he was crazy. But then an opportunity presented itself. And in 2008, I suddenly found myself making a couple hundred barrels of wine for somebody. And it just kind of went on from there. And so I did that for 7 years, had my own wine label for a while. I was making wine under contract for 4 or 5 other brands. And I think the last year we did like 3,000 cases or so for Ghost Hill Cellars. And so, as everybody knows, food and wine are, they're peas and carrots, right? Mm-hmm. Peanut butter and jelly. They go together, and if done right, the two only serve to make each better. So for me, wine is very much a catalyst. It's the thing that brings people together around a table. It makes food express the best parts of it. It amplifies flavors and aromatics. And I absolutely love the experience of taking those two things and creating a magical experience for people. And if there's anything I miss about the wine industry since leaving that, I miss the people. And I miss having those moments where we're able to create magical experiences by pairing food and wine. So pork in and of itself can be really fun to make meals and specific pairings with wine. But one of the things that we say about Pinot Noir is that it is a reflection of the terroir or the place in which it's grown. And I wholeheartedly believe that Meishan is absolutely the Pinot of pork. I think that I know that I've gotten some of, I believe it was prosciutto that I ordered from you, and that was just like no prosciutto I've ever had before. And I've had the opportunity, of course, to taste Meishan from our own place. I think I told you this yesterday. I really feel like we should get a conference together where everybody brings, some Meishan from their own place, because I really think we will see an incredible difference in the way that these pigs take from the land and then return that in the flavor profiles that we'll see. It's incredibly, incredibly tender. Its flavor is so much deeper than any other pork I've ever experienced, and I have been all over the world. Traveled extensively in Europe. I've had the opportunity and been blessed to eat at some of the most phenomenal restaurants in Italy. And I just cannot express how much Meishan blows my mind in terms of the mouth-watering quality of the fat. I typically like very lean meat because I don't really enjoy eating fat. Usually it has sort of a greasy chewiness to it. It's just not a lot of, that's just not where it's just not where the pleasure in food or meat comes from for me. But when we had our first Meishan roast and we had a bunch of our farm friends over for dinner that first night, and here we all are sitting down to eat Meishan at home for the first time, and hearing what people were saying around the table was an absolute reflection of that. It's like umami, right? Which is that flavor sense that literally just makes your mouth water. Mm-hmm. And that's what Meishan fat is to me. It melts in the mouth. It is absolutely an experience. It's just really unique. So I'm excited to be able to see the differences between all of this. It's also because Meishan is darker in terms of its color, and it has that more richer, deeper flavor to it. It can also very much stand up to darker reds, which you typically wouldn't pair with pork, right? We typically say red meat with red wine. And usually when people are reaching for a Cabernet, they want a ribeye with it. Yeah. But with the experience that I've had with the meat that we've cooked from our own pigs so far, is that I really believe that depending on how the Meishan is cooked and how you season it and how you prepare it, whether you're smoking it, grilling it, searing it, roasting it, you can literally pair it with just about anything on the wine spectrum, which I think is very exciting.
It is so impressive.
I'm going to let the cat out of the bag a little bit, but we're going to do an event in September.
Yeah, we'll do some other postings about it. I don't want to put, it's a challenge for me with the hats that I wear. So,
I just want to say that I'm going to be inviting a bunch of industry restaurant folks out from Portland, which if anybody out there is a foodie and knows much about the Portland restaurant scene, it can be a little insane and over the top. But I really, truly believe that some of the best restaurants, chefs, butchers, and the like in the country can be found in Portland. And we're going to invite some of them out to the farm. And we've got a chef that's going to take, whatever he wants from half a hog and put together this phenomenal tasting experience. And we're going to try to introduce these big restaurateurs to Meishan pork for possibly the first time and wow them with how versatile and how amazing it can be and how much fun it can be to pair it and make, hopefully, result in them wanting to make Meishan pork an important part of their restaurant programs.
I think you'll be successful at that. I think you're very talented with your words and your experiences. Just to step back on a couple of comments here. Tara asked what you pair your chops with, and it sounds like it can go any direction. Like you said, a bold red or a Pinot, I guess, really from your region.
Yeah, I would say that depending on how you are preparing your chops, that if you're keeping your seasoning very simple or very lightly herbal, then you could put a nice buttery Chardonnay or even a dry Riesling with them. And depending on what you side with it, it will do just fine. I also think that depending on how you're seasoning those chops, if you're going with something that's, maybe Cajun or bolder in flavor, or depending on how you're cooking them, Pinot is a no-brainer. Pinot and pork are always fantastic together, but you could easily put a lot of Tempranillo or a Syrah as well. It just really depends on the preparation and how you're seasoning them. But I really think it has the type of versatility that can go the entire gamut.
Yep. Okay. Fantastic. And then Jonathan says, yes, that he has noticed a difference in the flavor of the pork from litter to litter and dependent on the season and changes in the feed program, which is really phenomenal. I mean, I just don't think I'm obviously a little biased, but that's just more great benefits for all of us to continue our work here with the Meishan. And then Pork Ryan, absolutely. He says, do a conference. Yes, I'll taste all y'all's pork. Yeah, so I will go ahead and say that I am working with Rebecca to head out to the West Coast myself and hopefully meet some other breeders out there. We've got several registered breeders, and I'm really excited about that through the A.M.B.A. to do that. And I look forward to doing more of those in other areas of concentrated breeders over the year. So next up on our question, I think you may have already answered it pretty much. With your history in the wine business, it's how does the Meishan stand up to it? You just want to maybe recap your thoughts there on how it fits within the restaurant world and wines and Meishans and where you see it going?
So I've had this conversation with people who've talked to me about buying the Meishan as a pork chair, and I don't feel that Meishan is your everyday pork. I do believe that there will always be a place for leaner cuts, and I don't think I think that because of the richness of the flavor, the depth of the flavor profile, and just the amount of fat, even though I believe it's the most incredibly high quality fat, it's not the pork chop you want to eat every night. It's not necessarily the bacon you want to eat every morning. But I think it's incredibly special for, those important moments when you want to do something special and different. And so while I don't ever see Meishan being a particular restaurant's only pork product, I do believe that especially seasonally or around that special of the day or special of the week or special of the month, or when a restaurant wants to do, a particular highlight throughout or a specialty menu or things like that, where they're going to do a nose to tail, which is very, very popular in the Portland area. It very much is a nose to tail mindset in terms of how we eat out here. And so I see it fitting a niche in the restaurant industry that I think is vitally important and that people will greatly appreciate. Just like nobody's going to eat Wagyu or Kobe beef as their only beef for every night for dinner, right?
Right.
And I feel like that what we need to focus on the most is how special and unique it is, and how, I used to have people that came into my wine shop who would say, "Oh, you have Ken Wright on the shelf?" Because for the longest time, Ken Wright Pinots were almost impossible to get your hands on. They were literally sold out before the wine ever left the barrel, their entire annual production. And every once in a while, I'd manage to get my hands on some of their library wines, and people would just be like, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to save this for this anniversary or for this special occasion," or, and I would tell them, don't wait forever, decide to celebrate Tuesday just because it's Tuesday. So sometimes having something special means you have to create a reason for it, right? But that's what I see it as being. I see it as being that moment where you say, you know what, I've got this really incredible bottle of wine, and I can't see myself opening this for no reason. So I'm going to take this incredible pork and I'm going to create a reason for bringing the two of them together, even if it's just because it's Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, and I'd like to add to that from a marketing perspective and where we are as an association and the number of pigs that we have out there. It's perfect and ideal for that, because that leaves room for small farms like ours and what our member base is to get a toehold, to get it in there, to sell their products, because one of the biggest challenges as a small farm is a consistent supply, which is what a restaurant needs. So I think that all that put together, I think it really positions the registered Meishan for a spectacular future. And I think we'll see that really in the next year to 18 months, just based on the number of pigs that are now in the market and just the numbers that will happen exponentially because of that. So yeah, I think all that's a good thing. So Tara, she's so funny. Our local Italian restaurant, she says, is very interested. So it might be a good market for other producers, which is kind of what we were just saying. And then she adds, but I might be moving to Oregon after this.
I need a farm hand.
Yeah, that's right. You did, didn't you? There you go. She can learn all about them. And I'm not even going to say that. Anyhow, one of our next to last questions is that there have been many changes with the A.M.B.A. or our breeder association in the last year. What are your thoughts on them, and what do you see the future of the A.M.B.A. looking like?
So I'm just going to start by saying that when I first found the A.M.B.A. and started my research and stuff, I really felt like it was a bit cumbersome and hard to find and make connections. And I have discovered in the last year that has completely changed. And I really feel like we should all give Laura a big round of applause for all the work she has put into this last year, because I'm not saying that to mean anything negative or bad about Rico in any way, shape, or form, because none of us would be here and none of this would be happening. And there probably wouldn't be any real foothold for the Meishan in the United States if it wasn't for what he did.
Right.
I do wholeheartedly believe that. But I really am grateful that Laura's taken the reins in the last year and really done the most phenomenal job of creating a easy to access, easy to look at, easy to use website and network. And I am so excited about the conversations I've had with other breeders around the country. Like I said, when I first started looking at this in January of 2020, 18 months.
It's not that long
ago. There was
one
breeder west of the Rockies. And probably, like I said, probably west of the Mississippi, although I'm not real good at where that, I'm just saying that there was one person out here,
Mm-hmm.
one. And now, probably by the end of this year, there's going to be 5 certified breeders on the West Coast.
Yeah, and you actually have one in California now too.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is an absolute testament of everything that you've worked hard to get balls rolling and to get things going in the last year, because I don't think that we would be where we're at today if it wasn't for all the extra work that you've done. And I really appreciate that. And I want you to
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you guys make it easy. I feel like every time I talk to you guys, I make more friends and find out great things, and how we all come together. We all bring so many different perspectives to the table that it is our success. When we come together, we're going to go places. And I also think you're exactly right. I don't think I could have done what Rico did. And I think that him passing the reins over allows me to be who I am and run with the foundation that he built. So I am thankful for that. And thank you for the kind words today. So our final question, unless you guys have any other ones, is thank you, Ryan. He says Laura, our champion. I don't know about that, but I do like my pigs and like the pig nerd life. So, what do you see the future of the Meishan? Where do you see all this going? What's it look like to you?
So, one of the things that we talked about yesterday when we kind of went through these was that the Meishan has a lot of challenges, right? It's got a lot of hurdles to get over. We need to, as an organization, we all need to be willing and able to educate the public about the pig, because I think people have a lot of misconceptions, or they have ideas based on other breeds that they think a pig. I hear people tell me all the time, oh gosh, you have pigs? That must stink so bad. I literally had a veterinarian that came out to pick up some turkey poults for me, and she wanted to check out the rest of the farm. She said, I've heard of Meishans, but I've never seen them. Can I see your pigs? And we walked out there, and she was absolutely floored at how clean things were. And that's not because I clean up after them necessarily, because I refresh their bedding once in a while, but they keep their pen areas where they sleep clean. They tend to go to the bathroom in a single spot, right? Or close to. Like they're just neat animals, and I'm sorry, but they don't stink. And
given the space, they don't. Just like other pigs, kind of. So yeah.
So I think we need to educate the public about them as animals, about how rare and amazing they are. I think we need to educate them about the meat and its versatility and its usability and how special it is. And then hopefully, if all goes well, we're going to create this problem, right? Where now we have a demand. And then the biggest challenge of all is going to be ensuring that there's enough animals in the pipeline to meet that demand. So nothing is worse for a restaurant than to set up create a program around something and then not be able to get it.
Yes, yes.
So I hope, I guess, in terms of looking at the future, man, I would love to see us as an organization down the road championing Meishan in a similar fashion as sort of the Kobe beef, Wagyu beef sort of thing, because growing up, and my grandfather was a cattle rancher, he raised pulled Herefords, and we always had, beef in the freezer from granddad. And I feel like, we've got to create that sort of specialty about it, because back then, heck, I was in my 30s before I'd ever even heard of Kobe beef. I had no idea what that was. So, that's the result of an organization that says we've got something that's really special and unique, and we're going to create a demand for it, and then we're going to have to meet that demand. And that's what I would like to see happen for Meishan. Yeah. Okay.
On that note, just to share kind of my mindset and where the organization is going, I anticipate launching a consumer Meishan pork page next year. Again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, in that there's enough pigs on the ground, and as those pigs reproduce and we have those litters, I think that it's time that we do that, that we do need to step out. And I agree that we also need to educate fellow farmers and potential pig owners. But I think we need a retail side to help all of the breeders out as well. So, yeah. And like you had touched on, I think that there are some great phrases or a catchphrase. You know, we have make mine Meishan. But is there something else that, like you mentioned, the Corbuto, the Kobe, that sort of thing that we need to tie into it? And if any of you guys have any input on that, I'm open to it. I'd love to hear it. I think with our brain trust, I think we could probably come up with something on our own that would be beneficial to us all. So Ryan says meat on demand. I think we're getting there. That's right. All right. If you guys have any more questions, that sums up our 16 questions that we ask in every one of these breeder chats. Rebecca, thank you also for jumping in. We had to switch you and Rhonda with Blue Tulip Lane. She had some conflicts this month, so she's going to be our person on the chat next month. I appreciate you throwing out other breeders that you've worked with and lifting us all up, and the great perspective and the energy that you brought to the breed. The other red meat, Jonathan says. With,
I like it.
yeah, I have thought about that one for sure. I think we'll definitely come up with something. Maybe we'll have to have some other sort of conference or group meeting or something like that where we work on fun stuff like that. So I think that's it for now, unless anybody has anything else. You got anything else, Rebecca?
I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure getting to be a part of this developing community and organization. I wholeheartedly am 100% behind what the A.M.B.A. is trying to accomplish. And anybody who wants to get involved with pigs and wants something that's unique and special should definitely consider the Meishan, because I think it's the best thing out there. So,
all right. Excellent. Well, on that note, I think we're going to end the broadcast, and I look forward to seeing you all next month. And we keep growing. I see we've had more members this month, and I suspect we'll grow again next month. So you guys have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.